All right, we're live. How you doing, Tim?
Dude, doing phenomenal, man. How are you doing? Is the question.
I'm good, man. We're gonna spill the tea today, Tim.
What's this crazy real estate stories? I'm looking at the title. I'm thinking to myself, okay,
I
where's this
learned
coming
this
from,
term
man?
from my daughter. I can't give you the exact metaphor. It's something about you say spill the tea when you're gonna gossip. Like if you have some a story to tell about somebody, you say you're gonna spill the tea. And maybe somebody could chat in here and say where that spilling the tea comes from. I got it from a 16-year-old girl, so I don't know, what the context of it is, but that's what's up.
I hear you, man. I hear you.
So Tim, I wanna tell some stories, some war stories. I want to tell some crazy stories that we've been through in real estate, and I'll start off if you want.
Good, man. What you got?
So one time, and we're gonna change the names and whatever in order to protect these people, but in reality, like this is it. So one time, I was, you remember my mother-in-law Pam?
I do. Yes,
She was
Robert.
a very very proper lady, and she was very. Always very mannerful and polite and very reserved and very proper. She's just a very proper woman. So I remember the first client that I sent her to show houses to, the kid goes over to the, as she's fiddling with the lockbox, and as a new agent, it's very hard to get these lockboxes open. You're nervous.
Right.
And the kid goes over to the garden hose and turns it on and starts squirting her with the garden hose. And
What? Come on, man.
I wasn't there. She told me the story.
Yeah.
Then they go inside the house, and the kid goes in the refrigerator and starts pulling out water bottles and drinking these people's water out of the refrigerator and like
Yeah.
going crazy around the house. And like I can only just imagine. Pam's like, no, honey, no, honey, no, you can't do that.
Don't leave the refrigerator open or leave food in the fridge, man. That's the first.
Well, it got so
recommendation right
bad
there.
that she didn't want to show these houses anymore. So I was like, all right, that's fine. I'll do it. So I go show houses. And this is like, I'm not going to exaggerate. This is
Sure.
exactly how this happened, right? So I am at the front door of a split foyer. You go up the stairs, and then there's a sliding glass door on the back of the house, and then there's a deck.
Sure.
So I go up the stairs. I'm turning on all the lights, and I hear the kid just screaming like "ah!" like that. And I go out the back of the back sliding glass door onto the deck, and it overlooks the pool. And the kid comes out of the back, and he takes a log out of the firewood pyre and just chucks it into the pool, and it goes whoosh.
Oh
and
my
and
goodness.
and
Yeah.
it was like at the back of the cul-de-sac thingy. It was like a reverse cul-de-sac where all the backs of all these other houses are all facing this pool, and everybody
Right.
can look down into it. Now, I will say, this was like it was like a foreclosure. It was like an unlived in house, and the pool wasn't being used at the time. So this wasn't like some. But then
God, Brian,
he
come on.
goes to the back and gets another log, throws it in the pool, and then the mom comes out and starts cussing the kid out, like you little this that
Sure.
and then he's screaming to her, telling her to shut up and everything.
Yeah.
And he grabs another log and throws it in the pool, and I had
Yeah.
to shut the sliding glass door, go back inside, and it was crazy.
All right, I got a crazy story for you. Ready?
Yeah.
So I got this couple, and you can tell there's a little friction going on, right? And
Yeah.
and they're out looking for houses. This is 6, 7 years ago when rates were a little more interesting. They're both working. Well, the husband is kind of like self-employed thing, and he's not always at the job, right? And she's getting a little challenged with them. She works down at Pax River, so she's got a good job. She's jamming. She is like busting her tail, and the husband says, honey, you got to save more money if we're going to buy a house. And she's like, well, I'm doing the best I can. And I thought she was some kind of like real chill and everything. And they're out looking for houses. And I get this call, and they really like this one house. And I run the numbers. The husband says, I don't know if we can afford that. Of course, he's not really bringing any money in. And they tell the agent, listen, we're just going to pass. The gentleman does. I get a call at 5 o'clock that night. Wife says, hey, we're writing, but I'm not writing with my husband. She says it's going to be a surprise. I'm thinking, whoa, dude,
I know where this is headed.
this is a cool surprise.
I know where this is
said,
headed.
well, what are we going to do? She says, well, I'm going to borrow money for my TSP. I said, well, that makes sense. I said, well, but you're going to still be a little bit short because to do this, I got to put 5% down. It's an FHA loan, a little tricky, St. Mary's County, Mechanicsville. So she says, don't worry, I can come up with the money. She says, but do me a favor, don't tell John. I'm like, okay. I said, hey, mum's the word. I got to go. We're good. Don't worry. So I'm talking to the agent, talking to I'll call her Peggy. Talking to Peggy, we're working on this thing. And lo and behold, it's like the week and a half before, she's still a little short. She says, hey, is it okay if I sell something? I said, yeah, that's not a problem. That's easy enough. What are you going to sell? She says, I'm going to sell my engagement ring and my wedding ring because I got some money. She says, hey,
she got a big old rock.
And I said, this is a win-win. She said, yeah, it was my husband's grandmother's ring that I got, and she gave it to me and I was like, hey, this is something.
Gotta do what sacrifice, Tim. You know what I'm saying? You gotta sacrifice. Time. Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do.
Settlement is at my office on Friday at 3:30. And I'm doing the numbers, and I called Peggy that morning. I said, Peggy, I don't have John on the deed. She says, no, I want it to be a complete surprise. I'm thinking to myself, oh my goodness, this is definitely going to be a surprise. So lo and behold, everything's going well, and we at 3:30 she comes in. The agent's there, seller's there. They sign the papers. She said, now listen, John still doesn't know. And he's going away for the weekend.
So wait a second. Did John not come sign the papers? Was he not there?
John didn't know anything about settlement.
But the lady was there to sign the papers. I got it.
It was going to be a surprise. And now John's going away this weekend for a men's hunting trip. And I was like, huh. She said, so I don't want to be surprised. When he gets back, I want to be completely surprised. So the movers come Saturday. They move all of her stuff and not his.
Yeah.
I get a call Monday from John, from the husband. What happened? I was like, what do you mean?
Surprise!
And I said, what? Tell me. He said, Peggy bought a house. I said, yeah.
It's a surprise. I wasn't supposed to tell you, John.
He said, no. I said, well, I said, in this case, it was just Peggy buying.
And you do have, just to kind of be clear, Tim has a legal responsibility to protect people's privacy, and I do too.
Yeah, exactly. To only respond to the clients involved. So my biggest story was it was not the kind of surprise that I expected.
So the guy's sitting there with half his furniture in a house, and I'm assuming he's still got the mortgage on that house.
No mortgage. They were renting. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And what the worst part is they were renting, and he was running his business out of the house, but he really wasn't bringing any money in, and so it's kind of crazy. But I know the rest of the story is it was actually a good thing for John. They eventually got divorced. I mean, it happened. So I guess that was in the ropes. That was in the cards anyway, right?
So it was a little wake up call to John that maybe
yeah. And John ended up having to close his business. He had to move out of the house.
Yeah.
He moved into a camper down at Piney Point. There was like some little campground down there. Lived there for a year. Yeah. I got with John, and we eventually, believe it or not, John got a job for Architect of the Capitol.
Go ahead, John.
And John bought a house 2 years later. And you know what? John and Peggy are good friends today. But back then, not so much. Top that one there, story. Mr. Mayor. What else you got, brother?
Well, I remember one time Tim and I were working on this client together. It was a younger client, and they were a little immature. And the problem with first-time home buyers and immature clients is they don't have any point of reference for what to expect. And depending on who in their circle is talking to them, they can get sort of bent out of shape over things that they don't properly understand. I'm being nice, right? So we had really bent over backwards to help these people because it's always a challenge with first-time home buyers because they're always trying to you gotta move a lot of things around. You got to find them a house that they're probably going to get their closing costs paid for and everything. So we ended up getting them in this situation, and it was like a long journey. and we had done a great job. Like Tim and I are really great working together, and I know we had knocked this one out of the park. So somebody, a little birdie, tells me that the chick is putting on Facebook that she's complaining about her real estate transaction, and that somebody had commented under it, and I think she either threw our names out there or she just generally started complaining. And it was one of these deals where Tim had just like given her a credit, or them, it was a husband and wife, just had given them a bunch of his own sort of credit in order to make this deal work. Like, people don't understand sometimes the sacrifice that ends up happening to get people into these houses or whatever. And Tim was ticked off. And so at the same time, Tim and I are trying to figure out these, marketing techniques. And one of the hot trends is to get people to give you reviews.
Yeah.
And it was like, if you can get somebody to give you a video review at the settlement table, that's like the gold standard. And so Tim's like,
a bet on this. Did we have a bet on this, Brian?
So Tim says, get a review. And I said, Tim, I don't know, man, especially after this. Like, people, you don't tell them ahead of time, and you just turn on your camera and you're like, hey, how good was this experience? It's going to end up making it very awkward. And I just kind of want to avoid that situation. So I was like, I don't know, Tim. And he was like, well, I'm going to send my like assistant down. I'll get her to do it. And he's like, nah, she's not going to be able to do it. So Tim said, I'm going to ride down there. He says, I know you can get a review. He says, I know I can get a review. I said, no, you can't, Tim. I'm telling you, these people are bitter. They're not going to give us a review. Like, you might as well just don't even worry about it. It was like 5 or 6 o'clock at night. Tim's like leaving the office, driving all the way down to wherever.
You remember that, man? I was going to pull teeth. Oh, yeah.
So Tim shows up like a whirlwind into this settlement. He's like, hey, guys, how you doing? It was fantastic. Oh, so fun. Can you believe we did it, everybody? They're like, oh, they just kind of don't know how to take the whole thing. So then they're all trying to leave, and Tim's like, hold on, guys. Hold on. Before you guys go, we're going to need to give you guys we need to go ahead. We're going to get you to give us a review. And they're like, well, I don't think I can. He's like, no, you definitely can. So I pull out my cell phone, and Tim's like, he grabs this, he's like, so tell me, how was your experience? It was, and they go, awesome. They're just like looking up, and they're scared to death, and they're freaking out. And Tim's like, tell me, was it great or not? And they go, yeah, it was good. It was really good. He's like, so what do you say? And they're like, yes, definitely. Tim and Brian are great. Make sure you use them. And I was like, Tim is a legend.
There you go, man.
A legend.
Remember,
for
I
that.
pumped them full of chocolate.
I'll never
candy
forget that.
Before that, that's the other thing too. You have to understand, when I have clients that are a little slow, I brought some candy bars. I fed them some chocolates, and when they got there, they were fired up. But Brian, now when I know it's going to be one of those chill deals, I'll bring my little cooler full of like some energy drinks and things, and get them. Hey, what do you want? A Red Bull, or you want a little Celsius? Come on, Brian. We know how the world is, man. You got to live large.
Well, you have another story you want to tell, Tim? I have a couple. I could just keep going.
Brian, you keep rolling, man. I love your story. I mean, my stories are kind of weird. People get the settlement, they settle on the house, and then I get a call like, I don't know, 30 days later. Hey, I don't understand. My water's not turned on. I said, did you pay your water bill? No. Why do I have to pay a water bill? Water comes from the earth. I'm like, no. You have a water and sewer bill. This is the ranch club. The ranch club's got septic, right? And they're like, why do I have to pay this? And I said, well, because you drink water, you use water for cleaning, and you got to pay for it. Brian, some of these people are just not prepared, man. I'm serious.
So this is like similar, right? So Valerie's very, very first transaction. And the thing was, I was super irritated because the very first 4 transactions, everybody told Valerie, you're not going to be able to sell any houses your first 6 months. Like, you need to just wait 6 months. And then you're going to end up showing, a bunch of deadbeats houses, and a bunch of deals are going to fall apart. Valerie goes 1, 2, 3 months in a row, or it was 3 weeks in a row. But she ends up showing everybody one house, they buy it, one house. I said, and I could tell you this.
Oh, yeah.
After that series of houses, I don't think I've ever shown anybody one house and they've bought it. And I've seen multiple people write an offer but never have bought it. Same way, this girl is first time home buyer, her husband. I don't know if you'll remember this one, Tim. And the guy ends up having a business that he doesn't know about on his tax returns, and he wrote off all of his income. So Tim has to jump through all these hoops. We ended up getting this deal to the table, but it was very bumpy. So then we get a call back that there's an infestation of termites, or there's bugs. There's bed bugs, right?
Yeah.
So she wants to sue the home. She wants to sue the home inspector, and so we put them in touch with each other. And he's like, "Listen, honestly, the way this works is, when I go through the house, if I don't see any bugs, I have to say there's no bugs." So he goes back to the house.
Yeah.
There's still no bugs. So then they ended up having the house treated like 3 separate times with 3 different companies. The bugs keep coming back. They get it treated, the bugs come back. They get it treated, the bugs come back. What had happened was they were called bat bugs, and they were in the ceiling. They were in the attic.
Yeah.
And apparently we bought it as a foreclosure, and the heat was off in the house, so they were dormant. As soon as they moved in, they turned on all the heat. All the things hatched, and then they started coming out of the ceiling, like going down into the floors, and they were like crawling all over everything. And they finally figured it out on like the 4th inspection. But at that point, she was suing me, or Valerie, and I was the lender. She was suing me. She was suing the home inspector. She was probably suing you. She was suing everybody at one point. And we just found out that, at the end of the day, nobody would have been able to diagnose bat bugs. Bat bug seedlings or eggs or whatever is what it ended up being.
But that makes sense. I mean, you don't realize when you buy a foreclosure, there are going to be unknowns. It's not like you can sue the bank, Brian.
No, I know that. People don't know that. Again, it's like first-time home buyers. It's like, sue everybody. I have a problem, therefore everybody else needs to solve my problem. You know what I mean? So and another thing is, like, when cameras first came out, and I can't remember who this was.
Right.
It was like 10 years ago, maybe, when cameras started first coming out.
Yeah.
We went up into the front of the driveway, and we're standing right in front of our cars. We're getting ready to get in our cars.
Yeah.
And I started being honest about how terrible this house was. It smelled like pee, and it was disgusting. And I'm going on for like 5 minutes, and we're at this point, we're just clowning these people's house. Like, we're just going off about how funky this house is, and we're just making fun of it. And I look up, and there's like a little flashing green light over my head, and I was just looked out. I was like, and I said, "Yeah, and those other people's house, whatever." We just got in our car and left. And I made a point from that point forward, never to sit there, and you have to assume you're being recorded all the time.
Well, I got a story for you. You're going to love this. Now, this is a house. The seller is a landlord, owns this house. He's got this client in there living in the house, and he made them aware we're selling it. It's in the ranch club. Hey, it's coming up for sale. It gets under contract. He says you got to move out by the end of the month. He says no problems. Everybody's good. Everybody's on the same page. I'm doing all my due diligence. My appraiser calls me up. Murph, what's going on? I said, oh, I won't say his name. I said, D, what's the scoop? He says, you're not gonna believe the story. And I was like, oh, geez, what happened? Just give me. I said, the appraisal came in, value's okay, the house is okay. He says, oh yeah, that's not a problem. He says, I come to the door. There's a code, a little box, lock box. I open the lock box. I get the key out. I'm an appraiser. I've been doing my job. I got 10 minutes. I'm going to get in, get out, get all the pictures, everything else. He says, I'm going through. He says, hey, I'm here. I'm doing a picture, doing appraisals. Doesn't hear anything. He's walking around, going there, taking pictures, doing all things. Comes to the back bedroom, Brian. I swear, man. Okay, ready? Goes in, and he goes in, and he opens the door. He says, oh, dude, whoa, I'm so sorry, man. He says, the guy turns around and says, oh, don't worry about us. Just do what you need to do. Okay. There was him, the guy, and his girl. They were like busy. I'm not going to leave it at that. I mean, really busy. And Dee's telling me this story. He says to the guy, listen, I got to get a picture. And the guy says, okay, we're into that. He says, no.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so I just thought that was funny as hell, man. I thought Brian would love this story, man. We're thinking about crazy stories.
I
But
have to imagine those people heard Donnie come in and that this was on purpose.
yeah,
That's just a
that,
terrible
that's
story.
like that's my bet. This has probably happened. Oh man, it must have been 12 years ago, 14. It was
Yeah.
a long time ago. It was funny as hell, man.
Mm.
And Don's like, no, I don't want that picture. I need a picture just of the bedroom by it.
Yeah, if you don't mind, listen,
So
I'm gonna
they
go
stepped
downstairs and
out.
get some pictures. I'll be back in like 5 minutes,
They stepped
and
out.
then
He got
I'm
the
gonna
picture.
knock. And
Yeah. And then he went back and I said, Don, he said, yeah. He says, but I did get a picture of the bed all messed up. He said, I did make sure I got that for you, Murph. And I was like, okay, more than I want to know, dude. More than I want to know. But the house appraised for more than, then I was thinking, was there an incentive to get a little bit more extra value? You know what I'm talking about?
oh,
But that's my favorite crazy story. You know what I mean? As far as this industry, you know how it is. Whether it's
yeah.
Peggy and John or whether it's the appraisers, yeah, it's you never. This world constantly changes. Never surprises us anymore, does it, Brian?
Yeah, and I think we have plenty of stories about people who, go to the end of the road and then they sort of switch people at the end. I think those are always those are sort of stories that realtors and lenders tell each other about the people that you were helping for years and years, and then they end up buying a house with somebody else, or they switch lenders after you've fixed their credit and
switch real estate agents. I love this one. They're looking at houses and they call the listing agent, Brian, and they write with the listing agent. What the heck? What's that all about?
Yeah,
you know what I'm talking
and as
about.
a lender, you're stuck because you're working with the buyer, and then the buyer calls you and says, "Hey, listen, I'm going to work with Dave now. Don't say anything to Brian," and then Tim's stuck.
And I'm gonna be non-representative. They don't.
Because Brian brings the client to Tim, and then they want to switch from Brian and go with Dave, and then Tim's not allowed to say anything to Brian. Then, normally Brian would be upset with Tim, if that happened, which that's never happened to us. But I know when I was a lender, it happened all the time.
Oh yeah,
it was always very uncomfortable. We have a responsibility not to say anything. We can't break that trust because you want to pick up the phone and be like, "Hey, your people are cheating on you. Try to get them back. I'm trying to help you out and be a brother here." But
yeah, the world's a wild place, and it's getting crazier now, Brian. You know that, right?
Yeah, I think that we're headed into a tough market, man. But people are still buying and selling houses. I'm still getting showings on listings. My phone here is blowing up, so we're still out there getting it done, man. But you have to tell these war stories every once in a while to kind of. Because when you're in the middle of them, it's devastating a lot of times, especially the clients that leave you in the end who don't show up for settlement, change their mind the night before and say, "Hey, I didn't realize we decided we can't afford the payment. What do we do?" It's well, plan to get sued, call a lawyer. You know what I mean? Hope that they don't sue you. Probably going to lose your EMD and, it is what it is.
It is what it is. Exactly right. We're going to say back in the day is what we'll say.
Yeah.
Remember back in the day, Brian?
Yeah.
All right, man.
All right, Tim. Well, I appreciate you spilling the tea, my man. That was fun. We'll do it again.
Sounds good. Talk to you.
All right, Tim.
Later.